Welcome to Free to Speak, the New Zealand Free Speech Union podcast. Subscribe for uncensored conversations with compelling voices and the latest free speech news from New Zealand and around the world.
Welcome to Free to Speak, the new podcast from the New Zealand Free Speech Union. I'm your host today, Dane, facilitating what I hope will be deep and meaningful conversations. My guest today is fellow board member David Cumin. How are you doing, David?
Yeah, good, Dane. Nice to be with you.
So David is an academic, and we were talking before we kicked off about how I introduce him. So I'll let him introduce himself, and he'll go as far as he wants to go.
Sure. I'm an academic at the University of Auckland. I've been involved with the Free Speech Union since before it was the Free Speech Union, right at the beginning with the Free Speech Coalition, fighting against Phil Goff's misguided tweet and the decision to cancel those Canadians. I'm a member of the Jewish community, and so I have all of my views and opinions there and have been pretty outspoken. I think that's me.
Yeah, we know exactly what you think, and people know exactly what I think, and I think that's a wonderful thing. We're empowered to talk.
I think it's good
talk.
that exactly we should all be able to express our views and disagree where we disagree.
And if you don't like us, you don't like us. What can we say?
I have plenty of people that don't like me. I can assure you of that. They made it very clear, and I respect their opinion.
Yeah, I mean, not so much. People are sort of more in my camp, but anyway, maybe it could be the charisma. I don't know. Well, we can talk about that later. This is probably not for the podcast, but anyway. So today, on a serious note, after the massacre at Bondi, which obviously, anyone would find appalling, but for you and I was a bit more affecting, I guess. The Australian government pushed through hate speech laws quite rapidly. We're going to get to that. We're going to start somewhere else, though, because in the wake of this, there was a cancellation. A cancellation. She was disinvited, wasn't she? A Palestinian activist and author, an academic, I believe. Randa Abdel-Fattah was disinvited from the Adelaide Writers Festival, which is a really big event that brings in a whole lot of pretty high-profile international authors every year. I think it's part of a wider arts festival. So she was disinvited. There was some talk that she was disinvited after the premiere, I believe. Might have had a word in the ear of some of the board. I don't know how much of that is confirmed or not, but it's not probably as important for our story or our podcast, what we're going to talk about today. But she was disinvited. Now, this led to a very passionate response and a boycott that effectively closed down the Writers Festival. Pretty much nearly every writer that was invited boycotted and decided to be no-shows, including our own former Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, who, as we all know, anyone that would be watching this podcast would know, wanted hate speech laws in New Zealand. So the response was interesting from a lot of I was on X and I was looking at a lot of the people justifying why they were boycotting. Free speech, they said. There was all sorts of talk like that. And yeah, great, free speech, fantastic. They never dealt with, and they clearly didn't want to be pulled into dealing with the worst commentary and some of the things that she'd said. They avoided that. They didn't want to talk about that. But were they correct, David, for boycotting? Was this a free speech issue?
Well, I think we need to give everyone a slightly more context than that. What was the issue? Why was she disinvited? And what were some of the things that she said or wrote? She, for example, changed her profile picture on a social media platform the day after the October 7th massacre to be a paraglider with the flag of Palestine on it. And for those who are not so familiar, the paragliders were some of the terrorists that flew in and butchered hundreds of people at the Nova Festival, for example. So this was clearly an endorsement of violence, in my opinion. And she kept that profile up for months. So it wasn't just a oops, I got it wrong, she knew what she was doing. She also has written that she doesn't think that Zionists deserve cultural safety, for example. And so I don't think this is someone who embodies the level of kindness that our former Prime Minister likes to talk about. Let's just put it that way. Now, so with all of that background, your question is, was it right for the Arts Festival to cancel her? With all of that context, it starts to become a very difficult question. In my opinion, no, I don't think that you cancel someone for outrageous comments if their body of work, the reason they're invited to the festival, stands up to the level of the festival requirements. However, and this is where it starts to become a really interesting conversation, I don't think that the festival has acted, or I don't think the people who were rallying around her inciting free speech have acted on principle. Because, as it turns out, a couple of years ago, the Adelaide Writers Festival, under the same board, disinvited Thomas Friedman, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning author of a slightly higher caliber than our Palestinian friend. And he was disinvited, or there was a timetable clash, I think they said, for an online meeting.
They said that at first. They said, "Oh no, it was a timetable," but that was a lie. It wasn't true. They disinvited him.
Clearly,
yeah.
And why did they disinvite him, Dave? What was the reason?
Well, because he was pro-Israel, wasn't he? I mean,
he was critical of the Israeli government. He was pro the existence of the state of Israel.
Yeah, like I'm not a big fan of the guy's writing. I mean, I hope I don't meet him on the podcast one day. But anyway, but he's I would call him sort of centrist. Like he's not to me a controversial voice, Thomas Friedman. If anything, he can be a bit vanilla. He's not. He's not. Put it this way, he's not going to have the Jewish equivalent of paragliders on a social media page. That's not who this man is. No.
But there was a campaign to have him disinvited because he is a proponent of the existence of the state of Israel. He's a Zionist. And one of the people who called for him to be disinvited was our Palestinian friend who was disinvited from the Adelaide Writers Festival. And so the double standard here is what really gets to me. Yeah. If it was a purely principled decision and it was totally on free speech lines, this person has said outrageous things. We don't agree with anything they've said on their social media, but this is the book that they've written and this is worthy of including in our program. You start to have a different perspective on things if they had been principled in the past, and if these people had been completely principled all the way through, which they haven't. And as you alluded to, our former Prime Minister said that she would know hate speech when she saw it, and yet the hate speech of our Palestinian friend has been all over the place. And there's been zero comment. I'm sure she's seen it. She's just choosing to ignore it, which is in itself a real concern.
Really tricky. That opens up a whole lot of questions for me about. And we'll get into that. So, the whole Thomas Friedman cancellation. Abdel-Fattah was confronted with it, and basically said in an article that but I'm paraphrasing obviously, but the gist of it was like, well, that's different. They're Zionists.
Yeah.
Why should the Zionists? They're that's who they are. They shouldn't be allowed to speak because of how horrible they are. So it's not a free speech issue when it comes to Zionists.
But exactly, and it goes even further because even after she was re-invited, which I don't think we got to in part of the story, but she was re-invited because of the pile-on. She then got asked to do some media and declined a media invitation because she would be on a panel with a Jew. And Jews aren't allowed cultural safety or to be heard. And so Miss Free Speech is for her, but not for us. And that's where I really see the issue, is the hypocrisy.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is there. The hypocrisy... It goes to the heart of, and from Jacinda Ardern, we can spend some time talking about her. I think what's so frightening, but also kind of reassuring in her stance is we did dodge a bullet when we helped to stop hate speech laws going through. Because one one aspect of hate speech laws, which people I think don't talk about enough, is like, if you declare what is hateful, whatever you leave out, you're basically saying is kosher. It's okay. It's not hateful, you know? And if you go on X and you look at a lot of the accounts who are anti-Israel and pro-Palestine, who are very concerned with what Prime Minister Albanese is doing over there, that's what they're trying to argue. It's like, well, I should be able to say this, you know? I should be able to hold on to all of the wacky things that I say about Israel. I would agree with them. They should be, because for me, we can identify just how wacky certain people are. And, you know, sometimes the wacky people stumble upon a truth, and we don't want that suppressed either. You know what I mean? It's like truth can come from anywhere, ultimately. We really do not know, you know?
Well, there's another argument to what you've just said, and that is that if you try and suppress these people, the conspiracy theory builds in their mind and makes the hate worse, arguably.
100%.
And it pushes it underground. They find each other. Of course, they're going to find each other in 2026. And then real hate starts to ferment.
Well, the backlash is real, isn't it? It's like, if you look at a lot of the responses to immigration now and what's happening with ICE and America and everything like that, I mean, for 30 years, it was just considered very, 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 very bad manners to discuss immigration. And I think that de facto censorship on the issue has created a hell of a lot of resentment, more than I probably realized was out there. And we're sort of seeing some chickens come home to roost in a way. That's what it feels like when I look at a lot of commentary from the UK and from here even, which really disappoints me. It's not like we have this wild immigration problem or anything like that, but people are clearly upset and they feel they couldn't talk about it. Now, it's a policy. It's a government policy. We're in a democracy. We should be able to talk about any policies. That was the whole Speak Up for Women thing. They were being disinvited or having venues cancelled, public venues cancelled, and all they wanted to do was discuss a government policy. You know, people should be able to do that, and if they feel they can't do that, what's that signaling? That the government's not listening? It's never going to listen. It's not kind of democratic anymore because you can't really have a say, and it's going to feed resentment. So. Yeah.
Can I just say how proud I am of a free speech union for standing up with Speak Up for Women and fighting some of those battles and winning in court and allowing them to have their say, and allowing other groups who would also be shut down to have their say too. It's not just about one group. This is about free speech of anyone to discuss just about anything, but government policy is right at the top there.
But going back to the whole idea of, if you decide what is hateful, you are de facto deciding what is not hateful. Right, that's the whole cultural hegemony project, I think, which is, and it's not a conspiracy theory. I think it's inherent in censorship like this, because once you make the choice to police what is hateful and de facto what is not hateful, you're dictating what all the conversations that happen around every dinner table should basically look like. You're sort of doing that. And of course, you know, we'd be left out, wouldn't we? Like a lot of the people that were very passionately for hate speech laws under the last government, also many of them were anti-Israel too, or they didn't necessarily see Jews as being as oppressed as other groups. You know, which goes against a lot of research we have now and all sorts of things like that. But that's sort of by I guess.
Yeah, totally. But this is to me less personal and more generic. Is what happens to the people who were really for hate speech laws, who didn't think that they would be caught up in them when the government changes, and it's no longer Jacinda Ardern who thinks she can see hate when she knows hate when she sees it. But what happens if it's, I don't know, David Seymour, who is now in charge of what's hateful or not and decides that actually the tables need to turn and this is hateful, which I'm sorry to say is a little bit of the problem that I think that the Australian government is falling into with their rushed bill and the UK for that matter, and making it illegal to say certain anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian chants. Now these people who wanted hate speech laws are very much against hate speech laws.
Yeah, because it's affecting
because they don't
them.
see that it can affect them.
Well, you pick that up too, and a lot of people that are pro censorship and hate speech laws, they'll often, I've caught so many, like post after post of people saying things like, haha, when the hate speech laws come in, we're going to get you, that they clearly see them as partisan. They clearly see them as a partisan tool to attack opponents, but not, they'll affect us all, that they will. And that's exactly what's happening here.
If I can get a little bit philosophical for a second, I think this is partly what is wrong with society in general, is that people have become extremely partisan without even the will to engage with the other side of whatever issue it is, and have a good, honest discussion and try and understand where the other person's coming from, and put forward arguments in a constructive way and have that dialogue and interaction. But no, people are wanting to shut things down and own the other person, and a debate is about who can win the debate rather than a struggle of ideas and a contest of discussion, where maybe there is a lot of grey and there needs to be an unpacking and a discussion. And people go right to unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the extremes, and just want to ban and cancel and shut down. And I think it's extremely unhealthy, and it can't do us any good moving forward.
Well, hate speech laws sort of, they work on paper like so many ideological ideas. They work wonderfully on paper, but the idea that when I have hate speech laws, finally my political enemies in this democracy will be completely trussed up like a turkey and won't be able to sort of push back on what we do in that. It's just it's fuel on a fire. I don't know why. What gets me, and this is something that I'll probably bring up a lot with a lot of different people. There's this default idea for a lot of people that they kind of work, and why don't we have them? So you read 9 out of 10 newspaper articles on hate speech laws, and it'll be, why can't this group have these protections? It's like, why are you calling it a protection? Like, do you have any evidence they protect anyone? There's no empirical evidence that they protect anyone. There's no empirical evidence that hate speech laws work. There is, ironically, empirical evidence that more dialogue leads to less violence in a society. There's actually evidence for that. There's no evidence that hate speech laws work. They're symbolic. And again, they're a signal of what the government thinks should and should not be considered polite conversation. But these are cultural questions. And these are questions, I believe, that need to be grassroots up, which, and here's me on my Marxist bent, but it sort of affirms to me the idea that this is very much a sort of privileged project looking down on the plebs and saying, you guys are quite uncouth. This is how it should be done. This is how you should speak, and this is what you should not say. Like, we're making the rules here.
But I think it's exactly that. It's also couched in terms of, oh, you are so downtrodden and oppressed, and we need to save you from the awful hate speech to the other side. And we're the white savior on the horse coming in to, protect you. Where actually, as you said, I think all the evidence points completely in the opposite direction. That you don't want to perpetuate victimhood and make people vulnerable. You want to empower them, and the best way to do that is to allow them to speak and everyone else to speak.
Well, that's the other assumption in a lot of these opinion pieces and articles on hate speech and censorship that we read, is that all the minority groups are on board with them. And that's just not the case. It's very split. And I know our community was split, but I think a lot of communities are split, Because
But I think if you go to the minority of the minority of the minority, the most minority community, I think they would be anti hate speech laws, because most of those minority communities have experienced in some way, shape, or form, somewhere around the world, some point in history, and they have a knowledge of that, the hate speech laws being used against them. The Ahmadiyya Muslims are one of the greatest examples. Here's a group that is not allowed essentially to practice their religion in Pakistan. They are censored, and I think they were against the hate speech laws. I remember speaking at one of their events that they had, and they had Michael Wood and Paula Penfold, and they were trying to get a handle on this in the early days. They know what hate speech laws can be and can be abused too, and they don't want to see that happening. I don't think anyone does. But the risk is that you let it in.
Well, a lot of Muslims don't consider them even Muslim. So, and it's the minority within a minority group is not the one that gets to write these laws. It's the more conservative voices, actually. It's the more conservative voices. And that's where a lot of progressives sort of get confused too, because I don't think they really understand a lot of these groups. It is more the people on the conservative end that will be dictating how these laws run. So it's a weird alliance between the left and the right. It's the right wing of a lot of these minority groups partnering with left-wing parties to try to push through laws that they're authoring, essentially, to suppress potentially dissent within their own groups. I mean, that's highly possible. I
think
like you're saying.
I think there's something else that needs to be said that is often confused, and I'm sure most of the listeners won't be confused, but it's worth repeating, that anti-hate speech laws doesn't mean you're pro-hate speech. There can be vile and horrible things said, and Abdel-Fattah is a good example of that. Glorifying October 7th is not something that I would endorse or condone. In fact, I speak against it, and I have on a number of occasions. But I also don't think it should be illegal, and that's the difference. I think using your speech to counter the hate is much more effective, and that's what we should be focused on as a tool for protecting communities, empowering communities, and standing up against hate is to speak up against it rather than make it illegal, which leads to, I think, all sorts of real problems.
So circling back to her case, they're not going to have a Thomas Friedman. They're going to have her, and she's able to say, and part of her mission would be to try to win over hearts and minds. She's an activist. She's going to want to do that. Thomas Friedman made too in his own way, not as stridently, I don't think. He's probably more an opinion man and things like that. But the issue becomes, and this is something that I have to deal with being in the arts, right? It's something I think about a lot. This is government funded. This is a government funded festival, right? And so they're taking taxpayer money or lotteries money or whatever it is. I don't know where it comes from exactly, but it's government funded. So they've taken this government funding, and the people that are entrusted with this funding have decided the public is not to hear from Thomas Friedman. The public is to hear from Abdel-Fattah. So is that a complication? Now, I think it potentially is a complication and quite a big complication. I was arguing with our friend, Christchurch journalist Philip Matthews recently. He thought I should just outright stand up for her and there should be no question. And my response was that, well, yeah, that's true. I would. I'd like to see balance. Balance would work. I wish Friedman hadn't been cancelled. That's my position. But this is government funding. And we have to be, I think, there is a complication there. Like New Zealand On Air, which I get a lot of my funding from, I can't make porn using their money. I can't.
As much as you want to.
As much as I've tried, I've banged on the door for stuff for years now, but they won't give me money to, hey, if anyone at New Zealand On Air is listening. No.
Well, it's also not just Thomas Friedman. There's a an author, Deborah Conway, who was disinvited.
She's a musician too. She was in quite a popular 80s band, yeah.
And she was disinvited from the Perth Writers Festival. And these are all connected, festivals for the same reason. And then someone went and had a look at all of the authors that were represented, and no Israeli, no Jew at some of these festivals, and plenty of pro-Palestinians. And so it's not just about these one individuals. This is a systemic bias and a real problem of institutional racism, dare I say those words together, but actual bias on the boards. Clear as day, and clear as day made by these examples. And what's striking is not just the boards, but it was 180 writers, I think, who supported our Palestinian friend. Not one person came to the aid of Deborah Conway when she was disinvited, and the same for Thomas Friedman. There's been a couple of principled stands, and kudos to them, but
so what would the problem?
The overall
have been
imbalance
with Deborah Conway? Sorry, what's the problem with Deborah Conway? She was very.
It was nothing to do with the book that she wrote, but on social media she had been also standing up for Israel against anti-Semitism,
anti-Hamas and stuff.
Yeah,
she's
basically.
Okay, yeah. So that's a complication because it's taxpayer money.
Yeah. So there's a complete bias, I think, is the real issue here, really. And then, yes, taxpayer money. So I think we always need to make a distinction between public and private, and between adults and children. Those are two core distinctions I think we always need to keep in mind. And in this case, it's public money. It's taxpayer money. And so there should be a greater free speech imperative for public money than for private decisions. And so I would also be in favor of not disinviting authors. But what this has highlighted is the bias. And that's where the real problem is. There's a clear and present bias in the people that are making the decisions and in the community more generally, the arts community, and possibly even broader than that, but certainly in those places. And how to address that is a far deeper problem.
Hold on, that's interesting because you say because it's public funding, there should be more free speech. If it was, there's more an emphasis on that. I mean, I do understand the other argument, like if it was private, if this was completely privately funded, they could have her speak and they don't have to have Thomas Friedman anywhere near them. I understand that.
It would also be a bit cringe if there was a lot of bias in that, particularly if it was a large festival. And I think we're having similar conversations, but because it's taxpayer money, it's public funds, I think that they need to properly adhere to their principles. And be held properly accountable for it. Private should too, but it's more of an issue when it's public money.
Yeah, but like I said, New Zealand On Air is not going to fund my porn. It's like at a public.
But they won't fund anyone's porn. That's the problem now. It's not just you. Like if it was just you, then
you
could argue bias.
They should just have no. But the thing is, look, one way to deal with her, right, would have been like to have a neo-Nazi speaker as well. But this is public money. You got to have a neo-Nazi up there with public money, with taxpayer money?
Well, if he had written a book that was worthy of inclusion in the festival, I would be arguing differently.
Okay, well, what if his book is like, I still like what I'm doing. I'm never going to change. This is me. That's his basically memoir. Like
well, I'm not sure that would be eligible for inclusion in the festival.
No, you're sidestepping. You're trying to get out of it. No.
No,
why would it be eligible for inclusion?
Well, so here's the other interesting thing.
Yeah.
Deborah Conway didn't write a book about the Middle East at all. Thomas Friedman, yes, that's what he writes about. Abdel-Fattah didn't write a piece about the Middle East. Her book was on something else, wasn't it? And so it was completely separate from social media.
Don't know about that. She released something. She's got a lot of government funding for her research and stuff. Yeah. She's got about
it probably was
$800,000.
She's doing all right.
She's doing all right.
But if your hypothetical neo-Nazi had written I don't know, a book of collected poems that was extraordinary, but on social media was Heil Hitler and all over the place. Yeah. Difficult decision.
Well, hold on. Whoa, why can't his Nazi memoir be up there? I mean, Abdel-Fattah was talking about Palestine and how she is supportive of Hamas and all of this stuff. I mean,
was that in the book that she submitted to the festival?
She's never really hidden who she is. Like, I think it was a
but
research
it's a different
project.
it's a different thing to be someone like Roald Dahl, for example, right? A complete anti-Semite, but all of his books are wonderful stories for children.
Yeah, but you are saying that there is a limit on the content. You are actually saying that.
Yes.
You're admitting that there's a limit on the content because it's public funding. It's like,
not because it's not even because it's public funding. I think any arts festival has to have some sort of entry criteria, right?
Yeah,
and some of that has to be about the quality of the work. Maybe
subjective.
Of course, it's subjective. Of course, it is. And you're right. Maybe the memoir should be allowed in if it was, really well written and emotive and thought provoking and controversial and it ticked all of those boxes. Maybe it should be allowed.
And people got a chance to debate him and really push back and things like that. That would be fantastic.
Wonderful. I mean, that's what it should be.
That's what it should be. That's me dictating the format of the Writers Festival for them.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's broadly outlining what good free speech in an open democratic society should be, rather than a group of people in a room making biased decisions and then claiming to be free speech advocates. It's the hypocrisy that really, really rubs.
Yeah, it does. It's a hypocrisy, definitely. It's an interesting debate. It's like when Tusiata Avia, is it Avia or Ava? Probably get in trouble for that. Had the poem about killing James Cook and sort of by extension killing white guys and things. A lot of people got very worked up about that. That was government funding. I mean, there is a question about whether should taxpayers pay for works that are racial attacks on themselves. That's what we're potentially getting with Avia and Abdel-Fattah. Like there's that potential is in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but sure, it's a worthwhile question to ask. I'm not sure though.
Devil's advocate. I'm devil's advocate.
Right now. I get it, but I don't think on the funding application form it was. I really want to racially vilify all white people. Please give me some money.
No, it wasn't. But the content is doing that.
Sure,
the content is arguably doing that.
Yeah. But I don't know. This is a great discussion to have, and I thought that those poems were not very good, a bit sloppy, a bit amateurish, and pretty offensive, possibly verging on incitement, not crossing the line. And I don't think anyone should have funded it, frankly. But if the funding criteria was controversial topic of our time, and the application was a series of poems on colonization, from whatever her perspective was, and with all that background and obvious artistic pedigree, it might be reasonable to have funded that project and then not be happy with the outcome.
Do you know what my answer to this is?
Go, tell me.
And this is going to sound wild because I get so much money from the government. I don't think government funding really works in the arts. I don't think it's fantastic. I think we've sort of hit a wall in our discussion because it is a bit much to be asking people, taxpayers, to fund a character like Abdel-Fattah. It is a bit much to be funding that, the James Cook poem. It's a bit much. It just is, right? And there's hypocrisy. It's not consistent. It's never going to be consistent.
It's the hypocrisy that gets me. I'm not convinced about the a bit much.
But that's not going away. That's not going away.
Let's leave it at that.
No.
I think the hypocrisy is the real issue here.
But that's not going away. It's not going away. It's baked in. It's baked in. No, it's baked in, man. I'll tell you why. There is a certain group who makes the decisions. Now, I've brought this.
I'm joking.
Yeah, that's right. I wish. The I bring up I bring up this character, my Tekanini tire changer, right? Now I talk about the Tekanini tire changer. The Tekanini tire changer is the character I use to say, well, you're never going to see the Tekanini tire changer, making any decisions or sitting around the table when these decisions are made about, applications for abstract dance shows that people want money for, or poems or things like that. Not going to happen. He's never going to be on the BSA. He's never going to be on the board of the BSA. He's never going to be, having hui with the Human Rights Commission to decide where the line should really be with hate speech laws. That guy's never going to be there because he's in Takanini and he's changing tires. Now, he's from a totally different world, right? He's not from that world. He'd be considered inexperienced, even though he probably consumes a hell of a lot of content and has a great sense of humor and all this kind of stuff. He's not going to be there making those calls. And that's a problem. There is a type that ends up in those positions. So all the art that gets funded is going to reflect their sensibilities in some way, shape, or form. They may take risks at times. You may get an outlier get in there who will probably be institutionalized pretty quickly. That's the other thing. You get a maverick in there and then they just get sort of swallowed up by the machine and they sort of get spit out and they look exactly like the other people that were on the board, like the Stepford wives, how the wives get turned into robots and things. Yeah, that person gets sort of basically replaced ideologically and everything. So that says to me that ultimately, I don't know if government funding works. I think the hypocrisy, we've nailed it down. It's a hypocrisy for sure. It's never going away. So that would be my thing. And it might sound really ungrateful because I'm the guy that gets funding from the government a lot less now. Like I am getting more private money, which is good. And the work's better. The work's better. It's a bit more adventurous, because I think there is an unspoken line that people have, with a lot of this stuff. But I don't think we're ever going to get rid of that hypocrisy. I think it's always going to be there. Jacinda Ardern, I do not believe is anti-Semitic and is like, you go girl or anything like that deep down. I think she would have understood how tricky and disturbing a lot of that stuff was. But she's got a brand. She's going along to get along, I think. I think that's what we're getting from her. And people do that in that situation. They would have looked at it as a business call. It's like, if that many people are boycotting and I don't, I get singled out. My social media just gets absolutely flamethrowed for a week or two. It may stay with me for a long time. I'll boycott too.
Yeah, it was kind of the safe decision, which makes it even more
because there's a homogeneous sort of setup. There is not a lot of people sort of default from some of these norms that these people have. So that's my controversial. Yep.
And I think there's another aspect to this which is really important. The group that were supportive of Abdel-Fattah are quite a vicious group. They would go after you. They would really, take you to task if you didn't get in behind them. So, it's a bit of the old zebra in the herd rather than the outlier that the lion picks up on. Interesting. Look, I'm not adverse to redirecting government funds from the arts into, education, roads, healthcare, other places.
Well, we need.
But I do see a place for it, and I think that your Takanini tie changer is a consumer of some of the arts funding,
a big consumer,
and probably enjoys some of it. Maybe, I don't know. We're kind of going a little bit into crazy place here, but
no.
Why not invite some Takanini tie changers to make a couple of decisions? Because reserve 10% of it.
Because I'd consider him, to be someone that wasn't informed and didn't know enough.
So what? You've got 10% or 5% or whatever.
Well, so what for you and I, but for them, they'd be like, no. This guy watches Adam Sandler and blobs out.
Yeah, but
he's lowbrow, dude. He's considered a lowbrow guy. Like, believe it or not, pro-Hamas academics are considered highbrow by a lot of these people.
Tell me about
it's
it.
Bizarre.
But they're considered highbrow. We could go down that track for a long time. But there is an economic argument for what was it? The difference between sticking with what you know and have done and works, and trying new things. And it's that balance that is really important. Because if you stick with what you know and it suddenly starts to become wrong or outdated, then you're stuck. And if you're only looking for new things, you might never find something. And so there's a great economic theory that you need a certain percentage of stick with what you're doing and make it work and keep doing what it did, but also look for new things. And when you find new things, it starts to become what you've been doing. And maybe there hasn't been enough of this searching for new and innovative solutions.
Well, I don't think
in the space.
Economics is a tricky one when it comes to government funding, because a lot of these projects don't make a lot of money. And so the KPIs have changed. And that's where identity politics is quite helpful. Because if you can say, we never made any money, we lost a lot of money, but we've got more female directors this year, or, this Jewish writer has been offered an award, or this Muslim cinematographer we sent to Venice, then that becomes like, well, we didn't make money, we lost all your money. Look over here.
The second and third bottom lines. Yeah.
It's a little bit like that. Yeah, I think it is like that. And that's the other thing about government funding, because it doesn't have to make money. It's not needing to make money to literally keep the lights on. Then that means that they can sort of serve way more narrow audiences.
Well, I would have thought the opposite. I thought there would be far more room for experimentation and trying different things and not just following your ideologically blinkered worldview,
But see, it's hard to, it's an interesting discussion, because it's hard to know if they think they probably, do any of us think we're blinkered?
Well, if you stop and reflect on what you've been doing and how you're doing things, you should be able to, see that you've got certain perspectives and you can interrogate them. And I do this all the time. Yeah, I've got certain ideas about things, and some people have challenged me on some of it, and I stop and think and reflect and try and, grapple with the ideas. And sometimes I change my mind, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But I think that's healthy.
I don't know how common you are.
Oh, dude, I'm an outlier in almost everything.
I'm being serious here,
except a lot of the good stuff. But I don't know. A lot of my friends, certainly my family, are also a bit reflective. We challenge each other all the time. And why do you think that? And where does that come from? And what about this? And how about that? And let's get to grips with it. And sometimes there's no clear answer, but we have an opinion. Other times we have to justify it. And if we can't justify it and there's better arguments on the other side, maybe change your opinion.
I'd like to think that I was reflective. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you are.
You think I am?
You're reflecting right now.
You mean my forehead with the light up?
But
literally?
Literally as well. But the very fact I like to think that I'm reflective, however many words that is reflective thought.
Maybe. I'm not so sure.
So you're reflecting again. You're doing it again. You can't stop now. Yeah, that was deep.
It was very deep, very deep. We're sharing too much. We're reflecting too much. So you're going to have to wear shades for this episode, because the reflections are just like, it's all over the place.
Yeah, right.
So, okay, well, let's move on to the hate speech laws in Australia, because there's something I just want to sort of mark for the record, right, on that. Now, how long did it take for them to push these laws through? Do you know?
I don't know exactly, but it was in the space of weeks. It was super quick.
It was super quick. Like the massacre would have happened when?
It was 14th December.
Wow. So it's only been about 6 weeks since the attack. Today.
Now. Yeah.
That is just crazy. It feels like worlds have come and gone between that time. But they pushed them through very, very quickly. Now, I mean, this made me reflect, actually, on the former justice ministers who were tasked with the hate speech laws in New Zealand, and that was Andrew Little to start with, and then Kitty Allen was the second one that we had to contend with. Is it Jason Farfoy? Was he?
He was in
the middle there.
Yeah.
I haven't engaged with him. He doesn't really want to engage with me. Andrew's engaged with me. Kitty has engaged with me. They're both very lovely to talk to, very open. They were very open and very good. And I got to talk a bit about the hate speech laws with them. I really want to get them on this podcast. Andrew's now the Mayor of Wellington. I don't know whether he'll feel a bit compromised, but he was open at the time. So let's see what can happen here. But I think all I'll say at this point is that we considered ourselves to be in a ding-dong battle with these people. Like, we were sleeves up or shirts off, rolling in the schoolyard, really giving it to people like Andrew and Kitty. But I think Andrew had them for a year or more, didn't progress them, and Kitty had them for a while, and when she said that she'd be parking them, her comments in the press conference were very. Do you remember her comments? They were very.
I don't.
Yeah, they were very considered. I thought she did really well with it. Now, they clearly wrestled with this. They clearly wrestled with the complications of censorship, of state censorship like this. When you compare it to what's happened in Australia, where it's been pushed through in a couple of weeks. I mean, I think credit where credit's due. I think we do need to acknowledge that none of these people rushed this. They may have still wanted it, but they never rushed it. They knew there were problems. And, hopefully we affected that. Some of our literature and mobilization at the time got them thinking, because they were probably getting our emails. I mean, a lot of people in Parliament do read our newsletters and stuff. So let's hope that they were one of them. But I think credit where credit's due, because especially when I read 3 weeks and it's through, and the laws that they put through are nuts.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other useful thing, of course, is now we have another example, and we can watch what happens in Australia for another year or so, or 2 or 3, and see what these laws do or don't do, or how they're enacted, etc. I really fear for Australia in that respect. But I think you're right, and I hadn't considered it before. But if they could have done what Australia's done, and we could be the example for Australia. The UK hasn't worked out so well at all, and so I think we are pretty lucky to have dodged that bullet. And I do think it's partly because of the Free Speech Union and all of our supporters and all of the work that our team has done. So
we made a lot of noise.
We played a little part in that play. But kudos to all of the politicians for taking their time over something so important. And let's take a little bit more time to see how Australia pans out, I think. The same with digital ID and under 16 social media and all of these really big, important decisions. We're very lucky. We're very lucky in New Zealand to be small, so we can be nimble, but also distant. So, and I don't just mean that geographically. Someone said that New Zealand is a long way away and a long time ago. We are a little bit behind in some things, and that's an advantage when it comes to big, important legislation change, because we can look to overseas, we can see what has or hasn't worked, how it's panned out, how we can do things differently, and whether or not actually the right approach is just to hold back a little bit and wait and see.
See, again, going all the way back to the whole idea of where's the empirical evidence. They've got no evidence this works, yet they're shoving it through in 3 weeks as if it's like a small thing and, well, what's to lose?
No, I don't think it's what's to lose. Australia as its whole other beasts. But I think it's mostly politics being played out, and this is something that they think will have an effect. It makes everyone, most people, feel really good. The government's doing something. And after Albanese dragged his feet over the Royal Commission and was really shown up to be someone that didn't want to get to the bottom of this or do anything about it, here is something where he can say, "Oh, look, we got something through that. We're doing something about it." I think it's unfortunately it's politics over principle again, and we'll see how it pans out.
And maybe some of the more cynical politics too, because the thing is that, are they prescribing the Muslim Brotherhood as a terror organization? Are they stopping funding from groups like that into the country? Are they, because that to me would be what you would do first. You'd say, where is all this terror coming from? Who are the big terror supporters? Are they prescribed? No, they're not. Okay, well, that happens instantly. Let's just dry up the funds so none of the stuff can be supported. Now, it doesn't mean that they need money for to spread hate necessarily, but that would be a start rather than hate speech laws that are sort of, I mean, the one that got me, and I really want to get into this with like an Australian legal mind, but you can, they're banning organizations, right? And I think they're going after far right groups by doing this. And the clubs that get, groups or whatever that get banned have no recourse. They can't go, oh well, we want to appeal. We're actually a motorcycle club, or we're actually this and that. No, they get no appeal.
Oh gosh.
So there's no due process in any of this stuff. It seems madness. And again,
it sounds very dangerous.
Very, very like the stuff around the clubs and that is very, very concerning. Are they really just going to go away?
No, but the prescription of a terror organization for an organization that is really involved in murdering civilians and enacting terror means that it cannot be materially supported from the country. And so I think
money
you're right.
Can't go back, and people can't be waving flags around. And
flags are slightly different. I don't think that's material
okay.
support. That's just support, and that's a different thing. But people can't be fundraising. People can't be recruiting or sending people over or sending equipment or whatever. And so there is a real practical, tangible effect that can be had. So that's something that could be done. But if this is we'll just designate you because we politically think that you're a terrorist group, that's a far different kettle of fish than a formal terror designation process.
Well, a group that is likely to engage in hate.
Yeah, and it's
not necessarily a terror group, a group that has dodgy ideas.
And we will see how this pans out, but it sounds extremely dangerous.
I can't see it panning out well.
No.
I mean, the Nazi Party was banned for 2 years.
Exactly.
Outright.
Exactly.
It was
Hitler wasn't allowed to speak.
Outright.
Wasn't allowed to speak in certain places, and they used it to their advantage. This became a rallying cry. I agree with you entirely. I think that this is the revenge effects are almost tangible, and the good that it does is negligible.
Yeah. And I mean, as you say, there are practical reasons why prescribing a terror group is a good idea. I'm not really one for symbolic politics, but there's good symbolism here too. It's like, we're not going to tolerate this stuff in our country, Yeah, we're not going to tolerate terror.
Yeah,
and in our country, we don't do that. At the moment, even in New Zealand, there's groups that aren't prescribed. And I mean,
that's right.
Talk us through them.
Well, there are two in particular. The other like-minded Western liberal democratic nations have prescribed. The first is the PFLP, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They were involved in October 7th. They've been murdering people for a long time. They were one of the early pioneers of airline hijacking and blew up an airliner with civilians on board. And so the fact that we don't prescribe them, and there is active support and fundraising attempts from within New Zealand to support them, is concerning to me. including, by the way, our friend Byron Clark fundraised for them, the extremism expert, as the media like to call him. But let's not go down that rabbit hole. And the other one is the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is prescribed in other places, but not here. And as we've been watching the brave Persian people resist their authoritarian dictators and be slaughtered for it, it beggars belief why our government, particularly the likes of Jerry Brownlee and Brooke Van Velden, who signed a letter saying they wanted to designate, have not done so. We're straying a little bit from free speech principles, but these are important issues.
No, but this is we're discussing alternatives to free speech, and that's important. On Iran, that protest massacre may be one of the worst in modern history.
There are reports of 20 to 30,000 people being slaughtered. It's
and I'm resharing all the faces of these beautiful young people, young men, young women, 22, 23, I mean, these could be my children, like this is, and it is absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
And the idea that this old man, this old slug is ordering this and snuffing out all these lives who just want freedom. It's just, I can't think of anything more crushing and unjust and horrible.
Yep.
It's a dire situation, and the idea that anything connected with this regime is allowed to operate in this country just drives me absolutely crazy. It's a reason to get cynical.
We have an embassy in Tehran. Don't forget.
Yeah, wow.
But the other kind of parenthetical point to all of this that is the lack of people using their free speech to oppose it. I mean, I've been to 2 protests in Auckland, largely organised by the Persian community. But where are all the artists and politicians, and where's Chloe Swarbrick? Chanting,
it's amazing
and
that
rallying, and
they just don't see it as a. Maybe it's because it's democracy, dude.
Well, this is what I think it really boils down to.
Maybe it's because they want it's democracy
between those values.
And their values probably deep down are just a little bit more reactionary. I don't know. I don't. It makes no rational sense. Why you'd make it refuse to call Hamas a terror group 2 days after October 7th. Yet really have nothing much to sort of add to this conversation. I find it very disheartening. And on that disheartening note, should we move on? No. Well, is there anything sunny to talk about? I think we've really brought the mood down in the room.
Well, no, let's go back and end on the high note of how lucky we are to be living in New Zealand. As the great late Fred Dagg, we don't know how lucky we are. And
we don't know how lucky we are.
And I think you make a really good point. Well done to Andrew Little and Kerry Allen in particular for taking your time, being considerate. Quite. And we will still, continue to argue against the laws if you want to bring them back in, unless you can show us good evidence.
That's right.
And really, that's what it boils down to. There isn't such evidence, and for good reasons.
It's just not out there. But no, it's definitely to both their credit. I think that this thing didn't move so fast. And Jacinda Ardern probably had a hand in that too. I mean, maybe there's credit to be shared there. She, in Adelaide, no credit. Sorry, on this potentially there is some credit. I'm sure. And she ran quite a tight ship. I have been told. So, maybe she was a little concerned too. But no, we are lucky when you look at what they've done in Australia. I don't think it ends well. It hasn't gone well in the UK. I mean, that's the other thing. We'll end with this. I'll open up another can of worms. The thing is with hate speech laws, if they worked, wouldn't the UK be utopia? Wouldn't it just be this amazing place where it's like, I mean, they are riven. At the moment, they have so many divisions. There's a lot of upheaval over there, and they I think in 2023 they arrested or investigated something like 12,000 people. for
Yeah.
speech. It's like,
Yeah.
if these things worked, why are we the country with the best cohesion compared to a lot of these other countries? Because we do. We do still have the best cohesion compared to a lot of other countries. We do. We just do.
And long may that last. And long may it last because we use our speech and we raise issues and we discuss things and we debate things and we live long and prosper.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, thanks, David. I think this ended up being a good discussion.
Always a pleasure, Dane.
Yeah,
It's good to see you this time too.
No, fantastic. Yeah, it'll be good to go through it and have a good listen again. And I hope people got something out of it. And of course, anyone listening, if you want to feedback on what we talked about today, be a part of the discussion, you can email us on podcast@fsu.nz. I did say net once and I had to re-record everything. So it's podcast@fsu.nz. We'd love to hear your feedback. Do share this podcast. Do subscribe so we can keep it going and have deeper conversations like this and really get into the weeds at times with some of these issues and potential alternatives to free speech. As you heard, we were just touching on a few, weren't we? And I think that's all part of it and all interesting. So until next time, keep speaking freely.
Thank you for listening to Free to Speak. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider sharing the podcast with others. We release new episodes regularly, and subscribing is the easiest way to stay up to date. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, you can contact us at podcast@fsu.nz. If you want to find out more about the New Zealand Free Speech Union, visit fsu.nz.